Hey, what's up guys? I'm in Hoddesdon, England, and the next 2 weeks I'm going to be doing kind of like touristy things in London, and then I'm going to go over to Dublin, do a little bit of touristy vacation stuff, but also shoot landscapes as well. And just like any trip in photography, I really went into this trip planning out every shot, really doing a lot of research in detail of where the sun is going to be, what the features are there, what people have shot beforehand at each location, really mapped out all the shots that I want to get. And after I did all that, I kind of felt a lot of stress and anxiety and really wanting the right conditions for those shots and just wanting to be able to come home with those epic, huge landscape shots with tons of foreground and an amazing sky and background. And it kind of got me thinking maybe I should take a different path this week going out and shooting these landscapes. Like maybe I should do something different. And then on the plane ride over, I was listening to a great podcast I think all of you should listen to called F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen by photographer Matt Payne. And all the guests on the show were just talking about like not doing any research, really experiencing landscape photography for why you got into it in the first place, and really just exploring on your own and not doing a lot of research and just finding the compositions yourself. And it really resonated with what I switched my thinking to this week, and kind of doing a 180 on all the research I had done. And I really wanted to transition back to what I got into photography for. And if you think about your favorite photography shoots, going out and just exploring on your own, when you first started out, you shot everything. You shot everything you wanted to see, interesting light, not interesting light. As you see right now, like the light's not that great right now. Midday hours, it's not fantastic lighting to go out and shoot in. And I really wanted to use that thinking of when I first started in photography to create more interesting compositions, think outside the box. And this little area that you see me in right now, I spent the last 2 hours just walking around, sitting down, looking at different features, and using my 70-200 lens to really try to single out a lot of these photos and really try to single out different things that I'm trying to get. And that's only because like these aren't photographs that I took today that are really going to be those images that you see on Instagram getting thousands and millions of likes. You know, these are really more of the calm down, like solid compositions, lines, textures, designs, different things in landscape photography that may be a little more toned down and subtle, but they're also a little more different, and really why I got into landscape photography in the first place. So I really wanted to make a video like challenging everybody not to worry about getting huge landscapes everywhere you go, or not copying compositions or photos that you've seen before. Really switch back to the critical thinking and exploration of landscape photography. Really go back to finding small scenes and finding like just a couple leaves against interesting bark on trees, or look for shadows and textures and contrasts that you could create a photograph to. Really sit and take time to think about the landscapes that you're shooting. Think about not only the grand scene, because really around me isn't that interesting. You could find this forest anywhere basically in the world, but what about this place is interesting? Like really sit and take it all in. Think about what you're shooting.
Oh, mothers, I see you hold all the fruits of our love.
This behind me is a great example of what I'm talking about. This tree behind me on its own isn't that interesting. Like, yeah, it has cool bark, it's kind of a cool color in this like deep burgundy red almost, but how do you make it a little more interesting? Well, when we step out and really look at more of the scene, we can get some singled out leaves that are coming down from the tree that are really bright green, and that's when you bring in a different shape and also a different color, using complementary colors of red and green together to really bring out a great singled out photo, really singling out these leaves in front of the tree bark, and then behind it having that tree and the detail and the texture of the bark and the color really come through. And you could shoot something as simple as like 1/125th of a second, f11, ISO 200 or 400 or something like that, and get a really good light in this photo, and then also really good composition in this photo, but really just subtle and simplistic. Here's another great example of one of those photos that's not going to be that gigantic epic Instagram shot that's going to make people want to go to a location. This is so simple. This is just an easy, simple wood pile that's right next to me. But all of the lines and textures and designs on this piece of wood, along with the moss, like you have such muted tones on this log, and then you have this bright green, vibrant moss on top of it, and the light has just been dancing around on this so much. And just sitting and watching the light dance and finding the right light to shine on it with highlights and shadows has been like just so amazing, and it's so calming to sit out here and watch it take place, and then finding the right moment to shoot it is really fantastic. And a lot of photographers, especially right now and what's going on in landscape photography, don't really take the time to watch things like this. It's like you get to a location, shoot it, and then you're out. But if you take the time to explore more in a location and see new things, your photography gets a little more in depth, and not just those mega shots that people shoot every single day in the same compositions. It gets a little more thought out, it gets a little bit more detailed, and just a little bit more interesting, even though they're not the huge epic shots. So I also want to talk about really limiting your camera gear, and what I've decided to do today, bringing only a telephoto, a 70-200 lens out with me, and only using this today to shoot these images and landscapes. It gets you thinking a lot differently about photography. It gets you thinking a lot differently about what kind of shots you can actually achieve in landscape photography, because I could easily come out here with a wide angle lens and shoot some really interesting, like jaw-dropping smaller scenes, maybe with the stuff that we have around us, if I got really creative and stood out here for hours on end and waited for great light. But really taking something like a 70-200 or even a 50 mil, 85 mil, 35 mil, and bringing that out into a landscape, it really allows you to think differently about the shots that you're composing, think differently about the subjects that you're shooting, because with this lens, you know, you single out things in a landscape. You find smaller details, you find smaller elements and designs in things, and really compress distances together that a wide angle lens couldn't do. So really boxing yourself in, it doesn't really make sense, but boxing yourself in with one lens actually allows you to think outside that box and allows you to think more creatively about the images that you're trying to get in your photography, and getting closer, more intimate details in a landscape. And it goes to show you can shoot landscapes wherever you are. You don't have to go to Iceland, you don't have to go to Patagonia, you don't have to go to Namibia. You can go out into your backyard. I mean, if you lived in Hoddesdon, England, like, come to a forest like this. If you live in Nashville, Tennessee, if you live in Denver, Colorado, which is kind of a stretch because you have amazing landscapes out there anyways, but if you live in locations like this, you can go in your own backyard or a close state park and use a longer lens and really think creatively about the locations that you're shooting in. So as we think about landscapes, like big landscapes, small landscapes, if you're finding yourself in a rut, really try to do no research at all, just going out and exploring and trying to create an interesting photo, I think will really bring you out of that rut. I know it has for me in this trip, and I know it's going to for a lot of you watching this too.